Welcome to this presentation on the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. We will examine the catastrophic failure of the plant, the immediate response, and the long-term impact on both human health and the environment. The disaster occurred during a specific one-minute window on April 26. According to the World Nuclear Association, the event was the result of a flawed Soviet reactor design combined with serious operator mistakes. Within seconds of a test beginning at 1:23 and 4 seconds, a massive power surge led to a steam explosion that destroyed the reactor core and blew off the 1,000-ton biological shield. The Chernobyl plant used the RBMK-1000 reactors, which were graphite moderated and water cooled. A critical flaw in this design was its positive void coefficient. This created a dangerous feedback loop where more steam led to more reactivity, which produced more heat, resulting in even more steam. The failure was a combination of design flaws and the human factor. During the accident, the automatic shutdown mechanisms were disabled and safety protocols were violated to complete a test. Additionally, the reactor's control rod had graphite tips, which, when inserted, these tips momentarily displaced water and caused a fatal power spike rather than shutting the reactor down. On April 25th, operations deliberately disabled safety systems to keep the reactor running for the test. By early April 26th, the reactor was in an unstable low-power state. At 1:22 and 30 seconds a.m., operators withdrew most control rods to maintain power, violating the operative reactivity margin and creating a configuration that virtually guaranteed an accident. At 1:23 a.m., the surge began. Fuel fragmentation caused rapid steam production, which detached the 1,000-ton cover plate. This was followed by two explosions. First, a steam explosion that released fission products, and second, a hydrogen explosion. In total, 14 EBQs of radioactivity was released as the core was exposed to the atmosphere. Following the explosion, the upper biological shield was thrown askew by the pressure, leaving the core region destroyed. The molten fuel, known as corium or lava, flowed into the lower levels of the building. To combat the fire and radiation, helicopters began dropping materials directly into the ruins. Over the next several days, helicopters dropped 5,000 tons of material into the burning building, including boron to stop nuclear reactions, sand and clay to extinguish fires, lead for radiation shielding, and dolomite to smother flames with CO2. While the turbine roof fires were extinguished quickly, the core graphite burned for 10 days. The disaster released a radioactive cloud across Europe in two phases. Phase 1 involved iodine-131, which had a short 8-day half-life but posed an immediate threat to thyroid via contaminated food. Phase 2 involved cesium-137, which has a 30-year half-life, leading to long-term environmental hazards and land restrictions. Regarding the immediate human cost included 2 deaths on the night of the accident and 28 deaths from acute radiation syndrome among firefighters and workers shortly after. In total, 134 on-site responders were diagnosed with ARS, having received radiation doses as high as 20,000 milligrams. Regarding long-term health effects, there's been no statistical spike in leukemia, solid cancers, or birth defects above the baseline for the general population. However, there were over 6,000 cases of childhood thyroid cancer caused by contaminated milk, resulting in approximately 15 deaths. The United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation noted the vast majority of the population does not need to live in fear of serious health consequences. The most significant public health problem created by the accident is actually mental health. This is often referred to as Chernobyl victim syndrome, where the psychological impact of the disaster outweighs the direct biological effects for most people. The social toll was immense. 115,000 people were evacuated, and another 220,000 were eventually resettled. Furthermore, the sources state that an estimated 1 billion abortions were performed across Europe due to the fear of radiation-induced birth defects, despite there being no evidence of an increase in such defects. To contain the remains, a sarcophagus was hastily built in just 6 months in 1986 under extreme radiation. By the late 1990s, this structure had become critical and unstable, requiring major reinforcements to prevent the collapse that would have released radioactive dust. In 2016, the new safe confinement was completed. This massive arch, which was 110 meters high and 260 meters wide, was assembled 327 meters away from the site and slid into place. It weighs 36,000 tons and has a life expectancy of over 100 years and allows for the eventual remote dismantling of the reactor. Long-term management involves the ISF-2 facility, where fuel assemblies are transported to a hot cell to be cut and processed. They are encapsulated in double-wall canisters filled with inert gas and moved to concrete dry storage vaults for the next century. To ensure that a disaster never happens like this again, the remaining RBMK reactors received technical fixes. These included increasing fuel enrichment, modifying control rod design to eliminate the positive scram effect, and significantly reducing the time required for an emergency shutdown. This presentation was compiled using data from the World Nuclear Association, the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. The images were created using Google Notebook, which is OpenAI, and different images on the 3 citations above.